whole group of different people that we're able to have on the call. Yeah, like yourself. So awesome. Although I think you've been on a couple of chats in the past, eh, Julie?
Yes, generally much later at night, my time though.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Okay, let's kick it off. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. OPSCHAT 23. I suppose it's OPSCHAT 23A because we're going to do a kind of 23B this afternoon with the western side of the world. But the whole idea of splitting into two was on the last chat, we kind of actually got up to about 220, 230 people over the course of the hour and a half. And we thought if we split it, we can kind of still keep the balance of it being a bit of a chat and a bit of a presentation about, you know, operations and that type of thing. So that's why we've done this. And it allows us to kind of focus a little bit more on specific areas. So obviously on this one, we'll be doing Europe/Asia/Pacific/Africa/Middle East as kind of a focus for who's on the call and what we're going to talk about. We've got three of our own team going to do quick little rundown, one on the ops alert. So basically what happened in November and what's kind of changed and changing. We'll try to focus on flight operations more than COVID restrictions. I think there are a multitude of sources for COVID restrictions. There are not so many to find what's actually happening in flight ops. And as Rebecca is going to show us in a little while, there's been a thing that we're kind of calling the COVID fog, where you might miss some stuff that's actually important when you do operate because of all the updates about COVID. So that'll be a focus for us. My first request is if you have a video option, please turn it on. We're all used to Zoom at this stage. We know what we look like. It makes it a lot nicer during the call as well when people are talking, and we're going to see a bunch of friendly faces. So that's the first request. So video on, mics off for the moment. Some of you have the masks on. I like it. And then the next question I have is, whereabouts are you in the world? I'm curious. So what we usually do is use the chat window, which you can find somewhere depending on your iPad or iPhone or computer or whatever. Find the chat window, just tell me where you are. I'm curious. You can use an ICAO code. We've done that in the past if you like, or you can just type in the name of the location. So I'll read a few of these out just to see what's interesting. So Moscow, Shanghai, Somerset, Dubai, Nice, London, suburban Philly. I mean, good on you, Steve. This is so impressive to have a couple of our American friends on. Eindhoven, Kiev, Hong Kong, LEPA, Palma. I'm not mistaken on that one. Steve, you're in Wilmington. Okay, cool. Nuremberg, Munich, Stansted. Great. We've got a real kind of spread there. Central London, so quite a few in London, which is great. I guess, especially in the UK, there's a lot of people kind of at home. Sao Paulo, cool. Dubai, Manchester, Praha, Brussels. Okay, cool. Nice mix. I'm going to pick out a few people just real quick and just kind of say hello if I don't know some people. Ruhi Chowdhury, I'm going to pick on you first. Where are you, and what's your international flight ops kind of connection?
Hello. Is my voice good enough, or is it too
perfect.
loud?
Great. No, it's perfect.
Hello to everyone here. I am Ruhi. I've been an Emirates airline pilot. I know Rebecca, and that's how I got to know about this wonderful OPSCHAT. I've been really missing the aviation touch ever since I was made redundant, and that's why I'm here to learn and just get back in touch with aviation.
Okay, awesome. And you're in Dubai, I take it still, are you?
That's right, I'm still here. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, welcome, Ruhi. Very nice. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Frederick, I'm going to pick on you next if you can join us. Good morning. Bonjour.
Good morning.
Bonjour.
Hello.
Bonjour. Oh, sorry, I might have two Fredericks. This is Frederick Orsenval I'm picking on. So where are you, Frederick, and what's your international ops connection?
So where I am currently, so I'm in Toulouse on the southwest of France. Okay, so this is the place where we build all the Airbuses. So I'm working at the dispatch center for the flight test in Toulouse.
Okay, awesome, fascinating. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Julie, I'm going to go to you next. Julie Ambrose, where are you and what do you do?
Hi, I'm currently in Bangkok, Thailand since March, since it's a little hard to get back into Thailand. Yeah, we do ops coordination, supervision, permits, slots, all of those fun things throughout Hong Kong, Macau, Southeast Asia. So any questions in those locations? Not that you can really get in, but if you need it, let me know.
Yeah, we are going to have a couple of questions about that in a little while. that is the first kind of question these days. Can you get in? Okay, Julie, thanks.
Thanks.
Maxime, I'm going to give you the best background picture award for the minute. Where are you and what do you do? Uh-oh. You're unmuted, but I can't hear you, unfortunately, Maxime.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, gotcha. Good
Oh,
stuff.
okay, got it. Yeah, I
Good
got some
morning.
issues with my speakers. Good morning. So I'm from Brussels, working from home now, but working as a safety manager and pilot for a major business jet company based in Belgium and in the Netherlands.
Okay.
Flying on that machine.
Yeah, what is that machine behind you? What
That's
is
an
that?
Embraer Legacy 450.
A Legacy 450.
Yep.
Okay, sweet.
Kind of fancy
Okay.
aircraft.
Thanks, Maxime. Good stuff. All right. Nice. Just to talk to a few people. We'll come to some more of you later on in the call. But I think what we'll do is kick it off with Dave Mumford and his Ops Alerts presentation. So Dave is just going to chat real quick. Ops Alerts are these things that we put out several times a day, give you a little heads up on something that has changed. May or may not be of significance for you, but you can kind of see the feed. You'll find them in Slack if you're in Ops Group. And then the daily brief is kind of built on these things. So every day in the afternoon, European time, in the morning, US time, you get a daily brief with about 3 or 4 of these, the most important ones. And in principle, Dave is the man that puts it together. So all yours, Dave, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Ops Alerts, we could talk at length about these, but we're just going to talk about 3 or 4 of the most interesting ones to happen in November. I'm going to share my screen quickly, and this is going to be quick. Can everyone see that? Cool. So what have we got? Wrong computer. Here we go. Greenland put out an interesting NOTAM at the start of this month saying that all flights were essentially banned. But then a few hours later put out another one saying, oh, actually ETOPS are okay, which is good news, because otherwise you'd be stuck between Canada and Iceland for an alternate. So you can now use these 2 airports in Greenland for alternates, ETOPS, tech stops and ferry flights, but not overnights. So panic over, really. It was a day of worrying that planes weren't going to be able to land in Greenland, but they can. It doesn't say so anywhere in the NOTAM, but both airports confirmed that tech stops and ferry flights are okay. NOTAM just
I'm going to jump in here, Dave. I know I said I might jump in at some point, but I'm going to go right in here. This one I like because this is, I mean, you guys know about the longer battle that we have with NOTAMs, obviously, but this is a situation where a NOTAM came out that was very unclear. And having talked to people in the group, we kind of got a heads up on the fact that a better NOTAM would solve the problem. And the Danish AIS were really helpful about this. And we went back to them and said, look, can you mention what the story is for ETOPS? Because not everyone is going to Narsarsuaq or Sandreström, but a lot of people will carry an alternate for a transatlantic flight. Please reissue the NOTAM and specify that it's okay to carry it as an ETOPS alternate. And they did that basically within 24 hours. So I think that was a big win. I like when we're able to kind of make a change happen like that.
I managed to do it the same day. I missed it, actually. The first one came out in the morning and the second one was issued in the afternoon. So it was a quick job, quick turnaround.
Cool.
So that's good. It's panic over, really. They just wanted passenger flights to stop coming, which has now happened. Hold on a sec. And now I can no longer click the next slide for some reason.
Well, let's just keep talking about Greenland. It's an endlessly fascinating topic.
Hold on.
I have a question from Steve in the meantime, and Steve says, to be clear, alternate period is allowed even if not ETOPS. Oh, I don't understand that. Steve, do you want to rephrase that?
Some of us in the colonies, Part 91, we don't have to follow ETOPS, and so I don't want to file it as an alternate. Not that I would necessarily with the range of airplane that I have, but some might want to file it as an alternate, just as a ETP alternate, even though you're not beholden to ETOPS. So
yeah, right. And this is actually an interesting point, because someone's going to correct me if I'm wrong on this, because we have a lot of pilots here, but there's not really a difference between an ETOPS alternate and, let's call it, an ETP alternate, or just an alternate. It's somewhere that you might go if you have a problem. The rules around ETOPS are very clear. Depending on what your ETOPS number is, whether it's 90 or 180, whatever, you have to have the airport available, still wind distance, weather available hour before, hour after when you might get there, facilities and so on. But for the airport, they don't really know if you're holding it as an ETOPS alternate or an alternate. So if they say ETOPS alternate available, it means alternate is available and you can go in there in principle.
I figured that would be the case, but I just wanted to.
Yeah. And of course, the diversion is kind of the next question. And it's like, if you're going there, well, then in principle, you're probably going there for an emergency situation. And then we're into the realm of no airport is really refusing diversions in an emergency situation. But yeah, to answer your question, Part 91, private ops, of course, you're not part of the ETOPS rules. You can just strap in and go. But yeah, if it says it's ETOPS, it's good for you as well. I'm about 98% on that. But again, somebody will jump in if I'm wrong on that. I think we have enough of a quorum here for that. If you do have a question, by the way, as Steve has just asked, stick it into the chat window there. James says, planning minima wise, I believe that there are differences depending on how the alternate is classified, whether it's ETOPS versus a destination alternate. And absolutely, that's definitely a point, James. It would be different. But again, for the en route portion of the flight, if we're talking about places that you might go if you have a problem on a long flight, let's say, whether it's an ETOPS alternate, inverted commas, or just an alternate, from the airport perspective, there isn't a difference. From the pilot perspective, there definitely is, because as I said, there's a lot more you got to look at if it's an ETOPS alternate. Cool. Dave, how's your tech issues going there?
Bizarre, but I'll try again.
Okay, good luck. We're all counting on you.
Okay. How's that looking?
It looks Israeli.
Looks Israeli. It is. This is the second thing that was kind of big news this month. The fact that Israel have now opened effectively to overflights. So before, and not only Israel has opened to overflights, but Saudi and Bahrain have also said effectively anyone can use their airspace for overflight. So before, from Israel to the UAE, for example, it looked like something like this, and it's even disappeared out the bottom of the screen. Out, down, around Saudi and Yemen and back in, and now it can be something more like that. This is a child's drawing. This doesn't represent real airways. I can send you a link in the chat in a minute to have a look for a document which will show you the real airways. You can also go through Bahrain. They've done the same as Saudi and said, yep, if you're coming from Israel or anywhere, you can overfly our airspace. And the same applies to flights using all of them, coming from Europe, overflying Israel, overflying Saudi, Jordan, and going off to Asia.
Do we know if this is good for business aviation yet? Because I know there was some discussion. I know the airlines clearly routine airlines know whether or not they can do this for Israel, but can business aviation overfly if they're not landing Israel?
The official answer from ASOC, who are the authority there in Israel who give permits out, told us that yes, they can. You apply for an overflight permit in the same way that you apply for a landing permit, as long as you've got a local sponsor and all of the other things. Yes, they can. The reality is, I haven't seen many people, many BA/GA overflying Israel.
Right, because there's quite a process to go through. I mean, anyone that's gone to Israel will know the process for bringing a business aviation aircraft into Tel Aviv, for example. It's quite in depth and there's quite a lot of vetting that goes on. And what we're saying is we think then the same vetting would kind of happen for an overflight, right?
Exactly the same, yeah. The important thing with Israel is you have to be departing from one of the airports on their approved list. Doesn't matter where you're going, you've got to be departing from. And yesterday, no, 2 days ago, they added Dubai and Abu Dhabi to that list of airports, which was quite a big deal.
Right.
That's the first time that the Middle Eastern, airport has been added. So yeah, it's technically possible. I wonder if Steve is on the call. Steve Jaff, who I've been chatting to. If you're there, unmute yourself and say hello.
He was coming on the later call, I think, wasn't he?
He said he might turn up for this one.
Oh, yeah. There's a question there from somebody who asked that. David said, is it only valid at specific hours? I think it is. I think there is a time window, right?
Well, this is another area of confusion. Yes, there is. Israel say it's something like weekday nights, and then from Thursday night through to Sunday is okay. Those are the times you can do it. Jordan after that issued something saying, come whenever, you can overfly Jordan whenever you like. So again, it's a case of one country says something, but then that only makes that is only useful if the next countries that you're overflying also play the game. And now everyone is with Saudi. Saudi was the last piece of the puzzle. Initially, they said you can only overfly, if you're transiting Israel, if you're going to Dubai. But now they've said it doesn't matter where you're going.
Look, it's a great option, especially in the Middle East, because what we've seen in the last 5 years or so is an ever tightening set of restrictions in terms of overflight risk, safe-ish airways and things like that to get you through there. This particular route, if you can do it, is a pretty good one. Because it means you don't have to go down around the Sinai. And if you're avoiding the Sinai, you've really got to go deep into Israel and come back across Saudi. If you're going north, well, then you're into the Iran-Iraq question, and that's also messy. But this one brings you straight down over Israel, Tel Aviv FIR, and then the Jordanian FIR, and then into northern Saudi, which is a different proposition to southern Saudi, which is obviously on the border with Yemen. So, this is good news. Okay, and just a comment from Michal there, who says, there are possible exceptions to the list. I was cleared to depart from Tel Aviv, or depart to Tel Aviv from a not listed airport. So nothing is 100% in stone on this particular thing, but we have a link
notice.
More on that.
You can, I think they say 30 days, but that's flexible. You can apply to go from anywhere. It's
cool. That's Israel.
Quickly on Cenamer, because I've tried to speak to everyone and no one's overflown Cenamer since forever. So this might not be that interesting, but you can basically now flight plan direct over flight level 200 until it's probably temporary, but you can do that. And also beware the new flight planning computer. There he is sitting on in South America. He will be watching what you do. You have to put a new AFTN address now when you're filing a flight plan. And that's basically a validator thing, like in Europe. And if you have done your flight plan right, he'll reply to you and say, acknowledged. And then he'll spit that flight plan out to everybody in the Cenamer FIR. And if you get it wrong, you'll get a reject message with, in theory, instructions on how to format it properly. So that's Cenamer. Hong Kong, weird things going on in Hong Kong with ILS signal interference, mainly Boeing aircraft. It seems to be something to do with antennas, the location of antennas and the terrain. Yeah, I haven't heard many people say that this is a problem, but I thought I'd chuck it in there.
So this
Boeing
was the
aircraft.
ILS to one of the 25 runways, I think, wasn't it? ILS interference, basically. Was that the deal?
It was 7 right, 25 left. Yeah, mainly.
Okay.
The advice was to consider just RMP, RNAV approaches as alternates.
Okay. Do we have a link for more on that if people are interested? Or
We do, yes. I shall put it in a sec. I can't quite see the chat window at the moment.
Chris,
so.
maybe you can find that for us. Say if there's a wee blog piece on there and you can stick it in. Okay, cool.
Sure. Yep.
The fun one, I love this. It looks like it's been drawn by my son, but it's actually really good. There was a big warning on it saying, do not use this, which I've ignored because it's great. So crew rules about trying to work out quarantine rules and do I need a test? What happens when I arrive is brutal. There's pages and pages for every country, but Hong Kong as well, about what to do and what to expect. And then they converted it all into this wonderful flowchart with pixelated arrows. But it just tells you at a glance exactly what happens. The new change is that if you're going to Hong Kong, you're coming from very high risk places. There are now different rules for you. Before there weren't, and now there are.
Do you know what I might do at this point, Dave, is just bring in Julie on the Hong Kong question. Actually, wait a second. Do we have Jeff? Because Jeff, you're in Hong Kong, is that right? Sorry, Julie, stand by. Jeff, if you're with us, I think.
Yes. Hi. Yeah, I am.
Hi.
Calling it.
Good morning.
Yeah. Morning. Yeah. So just further to David's comment, that was, I believe, the latest circular issued on the 20th of November. So as of the 22nd of November, there's actually a new guidelines because we've had a spike in cases within the past 2 days. So now there's actually a new guideline, further tightening of the measures. And I can forward that to David, and then David can forward that out to everybody.
Okay, and so is this related in any way to the Hong Kong-Singapore travel bubble that isn't, yes. Or is it is? So it's kind of,
it's supposed to start on the 22nd, if I believe, if I got the dates correct. But because of this increase in locally transmitted cases, and because of I suppose a big majority of it being non-traceable, they've had to postpone the bubble for 2 weeks.
Oh, for 2 weeks. Okay.
This, that they're tightening up the sort of the testing measures for incoming crew.
Okay.
Jeff, do you know with that travel bubble, do you think it will apply to everyone, or is it only going to be a couple of airlines?
I think it will. Well, I think initially, because of the way the airlines are, I mean, maybe the flight routes, I think it's only applying to Singapore Airlines and Cathay at the moment, just right. Because it's only a cap. They've got a limit of 200 passengers per day at the very beginning of this bubble. And I think depending on how the bubble goes, if it goes smoothly, then I think they'll increase the quota per day of passengers traveling. But obviously, you know, it's already hit a snag before it's even taken off because of the locally transmitted cases in Hong Kong.
Okay. And on your previous point about the new tightening of restrictions, I wonder if there's a nice new juicy flow chart to go with them.
Actually, they've made it into an easier to understand chart, so it's definitely not as confusing this time around. Yeah,
I like charts. Yeah. Okay. Good. Nice. Julie, could you maybe talk for a second about what you've seen recently with flights to Hong Kong? I'm mainly thinking parking issues, what's happening with the slots, and how stressful is this process getting through
Not at all.
reliable?
It's probably the easiest time that we've had a really long time getting slots, parking. Of course, you know, as Jeff said, there's very few, you know, flights coming in to Hong Kong because of all of these spikes recently, and for various reasons. But yeah, we have had no issues getting our slots and parking. We've been doing quite a few medevac flights, cargo flights, some just general, you know, taking people out or Hong Kong ID holders in to Hong Kong, but no problems recently.
Good. Okay, that's
good time to go to Hong Kong. If you
yeah,
can get
first
in.
time that we could have said that. Yeah, and slots not an issue because there's no one flying.
No, slots,
one,
parking, and even, I mean, various changes as well in our flights, you know, and no problem at all.
Which goes to show when things get a bit easier, it's not the people that control Hong Kong Airport that are the problem. It's just how busy it is. It's just a busy place and it's difficult. Good. Okay. That's Hong Kong. Thank you. I do have one more slide, but there we go. China. Watch out if you're going to China. Don't be this man. This is my last slide. I just thought I'd throw it in there. Two things in China to be aware of. Hotels are still a bit miserable, as you can see. You have to, unless you've got diplomatic clearance, if you're going to China, you have to spend 2 days in quarantine before you can leave again. So lots of reports of people getting kind of stuck
2
in their own.
days? You got to spend 2 days regardless if you're going to China?
14 days.
Oh, 14. So 2 weeks, right?
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I might have said 2 days. 14 days, slightly worse.
Both sound kind of horrific, to be honest, if that's the setup. But yeah, we got a note from somebody who,
Raul, if
Mikhail says he just finished. There's a comment in the chat window here from Mikhail who says he just finished hotel quarantine in Shanghai, and that looks pretty luxurious. Mikhail, I'll come to you. Have you got a video and a mic on there? Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your hotel quarantine in Shanghai was like?
Sure. Hi. Good afternoon. It actually in China really depends. It really depends where you go. I mean, basically, the biggest gateways are like a Shanghai, Tianjin, or a Guangzhou. If you can avoid Guangzhou or Tianjin, probably Qingdao is a good option, and Shanghai is probably best. It actually really depends where you're assigned. People, I mean, if you arrive either as a crew or as a passenger, there is absolutely no influence where you're gonna be put into which hotel.
So did you arrive as a crew member or as a?
I arrived to Shanghai as passenger.
Okay, in order to operate a flight, or was this entirely a personal trip?
It was like I was returning. I'm a pilot. I was returning from recurrence. So basically, I mean, it's still I need to quarantine in China. There are no exemptions. There are no easy come and go unless you're operating in the airlines. So basically, for the GA, BA, everyone needs to do a 14 days quarantine. I'm happy right now to be in home because I'm Shanghai based. So basically, Shanghai is the only place that allows 7+7 days quarantine. So after 7 days in a hotel and negative test, you're allowed to go to home. It's not that you are allowed to go to home. It's not like in a Hong Kong that actually airline or your company organizes you the transportation. Basically, you are under a surveillance, under the like you're all the time accompanied by the Ghostbuster, by the people from the society, and government, and so on. So hotels are from okay-ish to bad, to like really bad. In some you can order the food from outside. You can order your groceries, but to be honest, I mean, if you are not like a Shanghai based, you are transported to hotels that are pretty like a far. So basically, even there's like a no access to Western restaurants. No, you need to use the Chinese apps and so on. So
Okay, so it sounds like a bit of a mission to get through. The 7.7 sounds pretty good. The 14 not so much.
Basically, I mean, my quick conclusion is it's not that tragic, but if one can avoid it, really it's better to avoid. I mean, it's like
I think the question that a lot of people will have is, what about just operating to China and coming back again if you're doing a business aviation flight? And that's going to be a different set of rules. And as far as I'm aware, if you're doing that, there's no 14-day requirement. You can do it, but there's probably, I don't have specifics on this, but I imagine it's the same as everywhere else where there's a set of restrictions.
What I say, I don't work in the ops, but I'm pretty close to that, and we have some challenges. Actually, I say it depends, and like a case by case.
Right.
There are places that are ready for that. For example, if you want to do that in Shanghai, most probably, if you do that in Pudong, where is a designated crew hotel, it's probably fine. But if you want to go to some tier 3 city that doesn't have any international arrivals right now, it's like really doubtful.
Yeah, got it. Okay, well, in summary, especially for China, but this kind of applies everywhere, make sure you do your research first before you end up being stuck in quarantine. That's probably something you want to avoid. I want to get to Rebecca, who is going to give us... Go ahead, Jeff.
I can give a quick supplement as well to China.
Yeah, sure, please do.
For whether it's 91 or 135 operators going to China previously, in order to get international permits for arrival, you've had to get a what they call a sort of a reception letter from the local CDC government, or so not the government, the local CDC provincial office before you're granted a permit to arrive internationally into China. Now this has been unofficially this sort of rule does not apply anymore. So CAC has now said, unless you're getting an approval directly from the Foreign Affairs Office of the State Council, which is an even higher government office, it's pretty much impossible to get into China internationally. So I'm guessing unless it's a diplomatic flight, it's probably, you're not going to have a good chance of getting into China from overseas.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. That's awesome. Thanks, Jeff. That's awesome. Look, the COVID restrictions, there's so many of them that it's good to get a quick overview, and then I've got to move on to some other stuff because there is a bunch of operational stuff that we want to talk about. And Rebecca is going to give us a little rundown, 5 minutes or so, or maybe it might become 10, and that's also fine. Beck, I'll do the same thing with you. I'll just jump in with a question if something comes up to me. But if you've just joined us, we've gone through a bunch of stuff about ops alerts. We've talked about Greenland. We've talked about COVID restrictions, China, Hong Kong, what operations look like there. If you have a question as something comes up, please put it into the chat window. You're welcome to say a quick hello if you just jumped in, and I'll deal with those questions then, and we'll see how much we can kind of get through in this hour 15, and maybe hour 30 if we push it out, but we'll see. Rebecca, it's all yours. Take it away.
All right. Let me see if I can share my screen. Hang on. There we go. This is very exciting. Don't miss the clearing of the COVID fog. So yeah, we thought we'd go through some of the main operational changes that happened in 2020, which you might have missed while focusing on good old COVID. So these are the 4 big ones which we thought we'd have a little chat about today. You probably have heard of most of them, so it's just going to be a very, very brief recap. If you haven't heard of them now, as a little heads up for you to go out and maybe have a quick read about them, because they're quite important. So November the 5th ICAO changes, we've talked about this a lot. We have a blog post you can go to if you want to find out the finer details on what the main changes were. But basically 4 big things happened on November the 5th. They updated the NATS contingency procedures. They changed how much you can slop by. Your gross navigation area changed from 25 miles down to 10 nautical miles, and they updated the wake turbulence categories. So in terms of finding flight plans, there's a few different codes there you might have to use. And obviously the wake turbulence separation criteria has changed. So yeah, go check out the blog if you want the full details on that. We've talked about it a lot, but they're the 4 big ones you probably need to know. Overflights that are also okay. I'm going to premise this by saying this is probably more applicable to US operators, but it's still quite interesting for everyone to know. Basically, the FAA updated 2 of their SAFAs, their special Federation aviation regulations. The first one was number 113 for Ukraine, and there's two bits of airspace in Ukraine we worry about. There's the Dnipro, don't ask me to say that whole word, I'm just going to call it Dnipro, FIR. That has issues with basically ground to air weaponry. And the other one is the Simferopol FIR. This was disputed airspace with Russia kind of fighting over it. So the FAA have reviewed both airspaces. They still say Dnipro is not safe to overfly. So for US operators, they're prohibited from going over it. The Simferopol FIR, they looked at the strategies Ukraine have put in terms of identifying civil aircraft, and they looked at how much the Russian aggression is minimized, and they say it is safe. So Dnipro, no-go, Simferopol FIR, you can go to. The other one's the Iran SAFA 117. They reviewed this and they didn't change it. They just fleshed it out a bit, and it's still prohibited for US operators to go over that. But there is a NOTAM linked to that, the Alpha 0016/20. And this talks about the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman area. So basically your Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait and Muscat FIRs. And these are perfectly safe to operate in and out of. They've got a little advisory there. And I know Chris is going to talk a little bit about the Saudi risks, but in general, it's okay now. Again, more info on the safe airspace stuff if you need to read up about it. Russian metrics. This was a bit of a confusing one for us. Initially, we thought it was all of Russian airspace, and then we thought it was just one airport. And then we finally worked out that they're going to apply this across all of Russian airspace, and they are beginning on December the 3rd. So if you're operating into a major international airport in Russia, basically check your charts before you go, because there's a good chance that once you're below transition, they're going to start giving you your altitude in feet reference to QNH. But it's a slow process because there's a lot of charts and things they need to update. So it is going to be an ongoing implementation. They've also standardized the transitions in your Moscow airspace. Again, all that info is in the Russian AIP, and the big takeaway from that is just keep an eye out on the AIP and on your charts if you're operating in, so you know what to expect when you get there. Last up, ADSB, NAT's data link mandate. This is a really big topic. I'm going to try and keep it very brief. ADSB is excellent. It gives you radar-like coverage where you don't get radar, and the world loves it. They're implementing it all over the place. But this is a bit of a problem for any operators, because where they're implementing it and when they're saying you need to have ADSB is different wherever you go. So the big one, Europe, which probably applies to most people here, originally they mandated it for June 2020. They've now pushed this out to June 2023. However, if you need to retrofit your aircraft, you need to tell EASA how you plan on doing that by December the 7th of this year. We don't know what that plan needs to look like. So if there's anyone who has done it and has information, share it with us, because it would be great to share that around. There's one exception as well. If your aircraft's AOC is before 1995 and you plan to stop flying your old rust bucket by 2025, this doesn't apply to you. So Europe 2023, but get your plan in by the 7th of December. US is pretty much anywhere in that picture, anywhere you use mode C, you need to be ADSB capable. And worldwide, it's generally above flight level 290. But again, the dates and the wheres and the whens are changing quite a lot. So we've got 2 blog posts out, the European ADSB and the mandates around the world ones. Keep an eye on them and we'll try and update you if we hear different dates on it. Very last one is the NAT's data link mandate. The final stage of this started January this year. And they're basically 290 to 410, you need to be CPDLC and ADSC capable, but the different regions have put it in at different times. I think Shanwick and Gander are still to go at the end of this year. And again, it's a kind of keep your eyes open, keep your ears open. We'll update you to make sure you are compliant and you do have the equipment you need for each individual region. And that's it, your 4 big ones.
That's awesome, Beck. Do you want to go back one slide? Because I have questions and other people have questions. Yeah, this one.
But I got through fast enough to stop you.
Epic. I mean, that was amazing. That was a lesson in PowerPoint. Well done. Epic. So, I mean, right as I speak, the question that kind of is on the tip of everybody's tongue when it comes to the North Atlantic is, why do oceanic airspaces publish different dates for exemptions about CPDLC? So let's roll it back quickly. ADSB is simply a kind of broadcast. When we talk about data link, we're not really talking about that. We're talking about ADSC, which is ADS contract. In other words, you're kind of communicating. It's a two-way thing. And we're talking about CPDLC, which means you press buttons to talk to the controller, not trying to find a HF frequency without interference. So this year, we were on track for all of the things that said between 290 and 410 on the NAT, you had to have CPDLC and ADS-C, the data link. And then COVID happened and the airspace emptied. And naturally, from an air traffic control point of view, it's a lot easier to separate airplanes when there aren't very many of them. And in sequence, it's a lot easier to provide a slightly more difficult service, let's put it that way, to aircraft that don't have ADS-C and data link or CPDLC. So the 6 oceanic authorities in the North Atlantic, namely Bode, Shanwick, Gander, Iceland, Santa Maria, and New York OCA East, have all published some kind of reference saying, don't worry about data link for now. But each one of them has done it in a different kind of a NOTAM, written differently for a different period of time, which has confused a lot of people. Yes, is the answer. That's a problem. It's not great. It would be great if there was one maybe super authority for the North Atlantic. There isn't. It's 6 different. I think I'm right in saying that because we've got, yeah, it's 6 different, in fact, 7, if you include the fact that Shanwick is kind of built up of the Irish Aviation Authority and NATS. Aviation authorities that have to issue this stuff, and they don't always match up. But the latest information that is there is in the NOTAM for the specific FIR. And as far as I understand, we're basically good through the rest of the year. I don't know how much longer it's going to continue for, but my guess is that once we start to see an uptick in traffic again, those will end. So that's the answer to Altug's question, which is there.
I can butt in there if you want.
Yes, please. Who's that?
Jacob Young, Shanwick.
Hello, Jacob. Very good morning to you. Go ahead.
So essentially, there are different NOTAMs out for different ANSPs, but it's just to do with formatting and what sort of time frame we can run for. However, we've all essentially agreed, all the NAT ANSPs, that will run to the 25th of February, 2021 for the DLM relief, or 50% of traffic levels versus 2019. Now, we are getting close to that 50%, and at some stages in Shanwick, we're ahead of 50% levels on a day-to-day basis when we're getting those sort of peaks seeing. But we anticipate that 25th of February will probably be the date that the ANSPs will run to at the moment.
Awesome. That's really good info. Thank you, Jacob. Okay, well, that's super interesting. So you've heard it there from Shanwick. 25th of February next year at the moment is the date that has basically been agreed upon for the continuation of what, that's an easier word, isn't it? DLM relief. That's a great way to put it. Or 50% of traffic levels. And that's also really interesting to hear that Shanwick are coming up to or surpassing 50% of the Feb 2019 traffic levels. So that's good news. I'll take that for what it is. That's pretty cool. Okay, interesting. So we'll continue to see the NOTAMs coming out, formatting differences, but the date is basically the same. So that's the news. If you're trying to get across the North Atlantic and you haven't got your CPDLC and ADS-C, at least until the 25th of February, unless traffic levels go up in the meantime, but I don't think that's likely.
Can I have a quick question for Jake? Because as far as differences in NOTAMs and mandates, and the U.S. makes you guys all look like pikers because we have more differences than any of you guys. But I've noticed recently that it seems like the FAA has been more harmonized, and I wonder if Jacob, if you sense that perhaps in what the FAA has been paying more attention to. We need to be, at least in New York OCA East, which is really the NAT portion of our airspace, be more congruent.
Do you know what? I think maybe at an ICAO level, yes, we certainly could be seeing more of that, but it's not conversations I'm involved with, so yeah. I wouldn't want to say either way, but yeah, it's been fine recently. You know, I think all the ANSPs are getting together and trying to see what they can do to help the industry. And there's been a lot more meetings than usual to try and see what we can do to get some initiatives in place. But obviously, as with everything, there's a lot of collaborations that need to be set up across the NAT to get things moving. But we think DLM Relief is that first step. There's a few other ideas coming up, but hopefully we'll be able to share some of them with you in the coming weeks and months.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jacob. And I think like for everybody, you know, across the North Atlantic has always been the #1 topic of interest for international operators. Like it's just streets beyond anything else. And this year has been a really welcome, I think, pause in the accelerating developments about all of the, you know, satellites and ASEPs and this is happening and that's happening and this date and that date. So it's in at least that respect of the progress of change. I think it's been a little breather for a while. Jacob, thanks a million for that. I really appreciate it. I want to get to Chris, who is going to give us a little blast on safe airspace. Thank you very much, Rebecca. That was awesome. Chris is going to talk briefly about some of the risk and overflight risk, particularly, that's happened this year. Chris, you ready to go with your slides there? You are?
Ready to go. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, good man. I'll just intro real briefly. Look, OPSGROUP is not an authority on the granular aspects of what risk looks like. If you're going to one of the places that we're talking about, you need to go to a provider of really specific information that can risk assess maybe that route or that airport and go, yeah or no. What we're trying to do here is give you a heads up. And Malaysia 17, both being the founding drive for OPSGROUP and also being the founding drive for the Safe Airspace project, is built on the fact that Malaysia 17 was an incident that happened because we didn't talk about risk. We didn't share information about it. We had a handful of airlines that knew about the risk in the Eastern Ukraine, and everybody else didn't. That's the simple view of it. So what we're doing here is just giving you a heads up and saying, look, these are areas that if you're operating in or near them in particular, look at the airways that you're flying on, make your own risk assessments, but know about the risk. Chris, take it away.
Thanks, Mark. I'll just share the screen here. Hopefully this works all right.
Yep. Looks great.
Hey guys, good morning. I'm Chris. As Mark mentioned, I'm going to take us through just a very, very brief airspace risk assessment. A lot has been in the headlines with COVID this year, and it's easy to miss some of the major risks that are happening in conflict zones around the world. So we're going to get straight into it. I'll keep it brief. Ethiopia, this is a rapidly escalating active conflict that's in the north of Ethiopia, in a region called Tigray, which you can see is shaded in light grey there on the map. It borders Eritrea. And we've actually issued an airspace warning about this one, primarily due to the threat we perceive for overflying aircraft. The reason why we think there's a threat, you'll see on the map there that Mark helpfully built for us, there are airways that are open and available. Those are the airways in white that are very close to the conflict zone. And there are no active warnings for those airways and no risk assessments have been carried out. You can see there's also a red airway there that's closed through the conflict zone, and you can see just how close it is to open and available airways. Just because they're open doesn't mean they're safe. And the other issue we've seen with this conflict is there's a serious lack of information out there. So the local NOTAMs are misleading. There's been a couple of airway closures through the conflict zone, but of course, no explanation as to why they're closed. And there has surprisingly been no active airspace warnings issued for northern Ethiopia either. Just to give you an idea, in the previous few weeks, we've seen cross-border conflicts, missiles, airstrikes, rocket attacks on airports. So very much an escalating situation and very much presenting a risk to civil aviation. Definitely one to keep an eye on. Moving along, Azerbaijan. Now this is a conflict that you would have seen all over the headlines in the later part of this year. It's an ethnic conflict over a disputed territory, Nagorno-Karabakh, which is in the southwest of Azerbaijan. The good news is this situation is improving. There has been a ceasefire agreement signed, but the point I want to make here is that even though officially the conflict is over, it's very, very much a volatile situation. There's a lot of tension in the region, and that's not going to go away anytime soon. In terms of airspace, Azerbaijan agree that this is still a volatile situation. And if you have a look at the map on the screen there, you can see there's two large sections of airspace that are closed, effectively preventing aircraft flying east and west, transiting between the Yerevan and Baku FIRs. Those have been closed throughout the conflict and continue to be closed, so not available for crossing traffic at this stage. And interestingly, Armenia have removed all warnings and NOTAMs associated with conflict. So our advice with this one at this stage is to continue to monitor it. It's very much still a volatile situation, and well worth avoiding the area if it's practical to do so. Saudi Arabia and Yemen, Rebecca mentioned this one earlier, very much still an active conflict zone. The Houthi rebels continue to carry out strikes against Saudi Arabian targets, particularly in the south of Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, this is effectively a military stalemate, so the issue is not going to go away anytime soon. And quite recently, there have been a number of attacks on airports in the south of Saudi Arabia, generally through the use of drones carrying explosives. But perhaps more concerningly, there have been ballistic missile attacks on Riyadh and Jeddah, which are the two major cities in Saudi Arabia, throughout the year. The most recent one was in Jeddah just yesterday, in fact. So what that indicates to us is that the Houthi have the ability and the intent to strike at targets throughout Saudi Arabia. So while the southern region of Saudi Arabia is perhaps the most risky, it's certainly an issue that could be encountered throughout the country. Just a quick note in terms of airspace there, you'll see at the bottom of the screen, the FAA prohibit US operators from entering the majority of the Cenamer FIR, which is Yemeni airspace. However, there are a couple of airways that the FAA specifically say are available. They're well off the coast, and you can see those in yellow there at the bottom of the screen. So still available, but can't fly over land in Yemen at any level. Guys, this is quite an interesting one. This has emerged over the last few days, the last week, I should say. This is a new and emerging conflict zone in the northwest of Africa and the Western Sahara. As you can see from the map there, this is a region that's effectively got a line drawn down through the middle of it. Morocco controls the western side of Western Sahara, and the region's independence movement, a group of people called the Polisario, control the eastern side. The reason why this has made headlines is that the Polisario declared war on Morocco just last week, followed very quickly by a risk advisory note issued by the FAA. The threat there is that the Polisario likely have access to anti-aircraft weaponry. This is primarily a low-level threat, so a threat to aircraft below 12,000 feet. But it's important to note that it is a threat, and there are no active airspace warnings for this region yet. But the FAA have provided some advice, which is to continue to monitor the NOTAMs, which I'm sure we'll do, and to also heed any instructions from air traffic control. You might receive some unusual tracking through this area. So very much.
I'll jump in there, Chris, with a question on this. One of the things that's interesting when we look at conflict zones, the big first question is always, well, who's going to be overflying there, and you know, what kind of traffic levels are there? So, you know, Eastern Ukraine is always kind of the benchmark, unfortunately, and Eastern Ukraine is an area that sees a lot of traffic. I'm thinking in this particular area, the bulk of traffic that runs through here would be in a southwesterly flow from Europe to Brazil, Argentina. And then the other bulk of traffic would be traffic that goes to the Canary Islands and back to Europe, which is also exceptionally busy, even still today. However, if you're looking at this and going, well, who else or when might I actually come here? If you're coming out of the States and you are thinking about doing a fuel stop in the Canaries, maybe Tenerife, maybe Lanzarote, Arrecife, you could end up in this region. you could also end up in this region at low level. And at least there is an FAA background document on this. I won't say it's a warning, but it's good to kind of have a look at this and kind of go, okay, who's going to actually overfly here? So I think that's one risk, would be traffic in a kind of northwest, southeast direction, perhaps if you're going into Africa. On the southwest axis, there are airways that are in the vicinity, but you know, it's a bit like the Ethiopia one. There aren't that many operators that fly in the region, and therefore you actually tend not to hear about things. And this is the real risk, is that you're cruising along at 350 happily, unknowing of the fact that underneath you there is risk. Steve says we use this airspace when using Canaries, tech stop, and on to South Africa. Okay, well, that's kind of what I was just thinking. Yeah. And the Canaries is a great tech stop, right? Because it's essentially Europe, but it's located outside of Europe. So, you know, you get all of that kind of efficiency that you expect, and on to South Africa. So that's definitely a risk, I would say, Steve. And Steve, I think maybe you can comment on this. There's a good chance you'd be at a lower level in the climb out of the Canaries here, right? You'd probably be going straight over that region. Yeah, probably less so on the on the climb out, but certainly on the return, they would tend to get you down a little bit, but probably not to 12,000. Remembering these, you're probably in the upper 20s to low 30s. Let's say you're cruising in the 40s, but you'd be in the purple, you know, for the most part. It's the border areas, or if something were to happen that you had to get down lower, or if this expands. So, but it's just, you know, these levels are always a little bit of a, you know, they come up with a number, 12,000. All right, but what does that mean? Well, that missile can't reach 26,000. Well, until this week it did. Yeah, right. Exactly, especially with the higher ones, and they kind of go, oh, it's safe at 260 or above. I don't know. One thing that's obvious enough is if you stand on a mountain with the thing, you're now reaching a hell of a lot higher, and a lot of these risks are in mountainous areas. Yeah, I especially don't know about a 12,000 foot ceiling to risk. That almost sounds like a level for small arms fire. Well, the man pads, from what I've read, 10 to 12 is the shoulder mounted, shoulder fired things. That's about their limits from what I understand. So no, there's shoulder mounted things that can go up to 240. 240. Yeah, there is. You need a bigger shoulder maybe, but you need a bigger shoulder and a bigger mountain. The bottom line is the risk is kind of always a little bit nebulous, but let's put it this way. And I like to think as a starting point. If you're overflying Iceland, you can be pretty sure that nobody has an RPG down there looking for you. Start your risk scale there, and then move your risk scale way up if you're in somewhere like South Sudan, where you can be pretty sure that there are people that are pretty interested for a multitude of purposes. So, you know, there's areas. I just read out a few of the comments there. James says that Upper Romeo 975 is the area that runs southwest northeast in the blue yellow area. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't realize there was an airway that far over. Minimum of 240 is the MAA of the airway. But again, if I'm overflying somewhere and it says there's a risk up to 12,000, I don't know. That takes me back to about 3 months before Malaysia 17, when we were looking down at helicopters being shot down, going, that's interesting. I wonder if there's a risk there. Probably not. And we were very wrong about that. So if we've learned anything in the last 5 or 6 years, we've learned that the assumptions that we build our risk assessments on are not always, you know, bedded in concrete. Chris, thank you very much for that. That's a great little overview, a great big overview of some of the bigger risk things this year, and certainly the ones that are kind of ongoing at present. So I'll get you to stop sharing your screen there if you can find the little magic buttons. That's it in terms of what we wanted to get through in an hour, which is awesome. I think we've all had to talk a little bit faster than we might have liked, but the whole concept here is to run through an hour's worth of operational things, focusing on flight operations changes that you might have missed this year and certainly in the last month. A whole bunch of people will watch this after we record it. So that's why the questions are really good. And also, if you can think of questions that you think other people might have, you'll find that other people tend to, you know, get value out of that. So we won't stop it here. We'll continue if there are questions. We'll continue to look at topics, but that's the bulk of the operational kind of info that I think we wanted to get into. And we'll shift a little bit more into the chat mode of things. I think we can all kind of take a deep breath after all that presenting. There was one question that I think I saw outstanding. Okay, let me try this. Altuk says, why is there not an exemption for ADS-B prediction tool issued for US airspace? Still need to comply with ADS-B prediction tool before departing for US airspace. I don't know if I understand that question. Altuk, are you still with us? Do you want to talk about that if you are here? Rebecca, you were doing an ADS-B thing, eh?
Yes.
Good. you had an article on it. Was that? I saw an article recently on ADS-B, which looked pretty good, eh?
Just talking about basically what it is and how it works. After, I don't know if anyone on here joined the NATS webinar or live presentation on the ADS-B. It's a very interesting system, but yeah, I think everyone's basically implementing it, but they're kind of doing it in their own time and with their own mandate. So it's hard to say when and where it's going in.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand the US prediction tool.
I'm
So
not
I'd like
sure.
to
I
look
guess
into
it's a
that.
tool of some sort. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not sure about that. Okay. What else do we want to talk about? Does anybody have a question they want to jump in with there? Now is your moment. You can.
I think I had that ATNB1.
I was hoping you wouldn't say that, Steve. I was hoping that would just slide away. That looked like a really complex one.
Doesn't have to.
No, I'm kidding.
Have to be.
Kidding. We'll do it just because it's you. All right.
I put in a Berlin background for you, just for you. Mark,
I didn't even notice that.
It's the Deutscher Dom there, right off of Mohenstrasse.
I'm not a local. Hans.
Oh, it's right. If you go to the Hilton, you must have a drinky at the Hilton every now and then, you know.
It's on my list of things to do. Unfortunately,
okay.
There's a rapidly diminishing list of drinking emporiums that are open in Berlin.
Well, it's also got the most amazing chocolate shop right around the corner too, with a chocolate A380 hanging in the shop. So
wow,
I highly recommend.
That does sound pretty cool.
Yeah.
I can't. Oh, here we go. Okay, Steve's question is an update on European CPDLC via ATNB1 would be interesting to me. Yep. We will be taking delivery. Okay, so you're getting an aircraft next year without a permanent exemption, and you want to find out if it's still screwed up as it was previously. I get the question. So you're going to get an aircraft that doesn't have a permanent exemption for ATNB1.
And it will have ATNB1, but it's in the Honeywell genre that right now the Euros is saying, oh, well, we don't really think that it's not working that well with our system. So it's not on, the old white paper thing. And
do we have any ATNB1 CPDLC, Jesus, experts here?
I'm happy to give you some input. I'm Jimbo Pine. I'm actually a demo pilot for Embraer, so I work for the OEM.
Awesome.
I do a lot of setup of ATN for various aircraft types. Long story short is obviously the white paper has now moved to the online database.
Right.
As long as you're signed up to the online database, if it's an approved avionics fit, then it can be used. But I do believe Honeywell is still exempt. You can't use Honeywell on the system. So in answer to the question, yeah, it's still pretty screwed.
Yeah, it's what we're finding is, so if you have a C of A after a certain date, and these new airplanes obviously will, it will have the ATNB1 fit, but the block number right now, Honeywell is promising it will be approved, they say, but I just didn't know if anybody, and I don't think is anyone using it a lot? in
Yeah.
upper level European airspace? I mean,
we use it extensively, but you'll still find the only places that it's really of great use are in the Maastricht FIR.
Yeah, well, Maastricht has fans.
Yes, but
so they'll talk to you.
ATN has quite a lot of different options. So
yeah.
You'll find that ATN works quite extensively between Maastricht and Germany. France is still pretty limited. Spain is as and when they can be bothered to use it. And Italy, half the time, they just tell you they don't want to use it. So you still find, to be quite honest, it's still a pretty limited system.
All right, thanks. That's plenty,
Here's
Mark.
A quick
we don't
question.
need to go. Yeah.
Well,
a quick question. Do you either of you know what this was the case before, but is this the case now? If you don't have CPDLC in Europe, they won't restrict you to the lower levels, will they?
No, I've not seen that occurring.
No. Okay. So right. Okay. So it's not
that's a good
crucial.
question, because that's generally the thing with ADS-B in other places around the world, where they keep you below 290 unless you have it, like Australia, for example, and there's a bunch of places in Southeast Asia that have that same thing.
I think it's very hard to limit people to a level when they have such a flawed system.
Yeah, and that's what I'm understanding now. So as of 6 months ago, they made a big deal about you need to put the X in the filing block to notify them that you have the exemption. But whether they check that against any list or actually restrict you if you don't have the X, or if it's just the honor system, as you said, Jimbo, I think it's still so screwed up there. They haven't, and COVID has, I'm sure, put a wrench in a lot of this stuff as well. So,
yeah, right. I mean, knowing quite a few European operators that work commercially as well as 91, so 135 and 91, they don't seem to have any restrictions. So, and that's for aircraft with and without.
That's awesome, Jimbo. Thank you for that. And I mean, I don't know, that makes my heart sing. That's amazing. It's such a specific question, and then we have somebody that can answer it in a brilliant way. So amazing, brilliant. I have a question here, which somebody sent me. We send out the emails about these and we say, hey, give us some questions in advance. And I thought this was an interesting one, because the big discussion the last 7 days, other than the US election, unfortunately, which continues to be a discussion. We're not getting political, don't worry. But the other big question is COVID vaccine. And in Europe, at least, that's not a political topic. But here's the thing, right? It looks like we're getting really close to a whole bunch of vaccines being available, and not discussing the vaccine themselves, but somebody said, one of the pilots in OPSGROUP said, I'm curious to view this as an instance of disaster relief and learn about the relationships that exist between pharma and aviation. How do the industry heavyweights anticipate blind spots in storage, logistics? How can private operators perhaps better organize to offer capacity and support distribution without tripping over ourselves and slowing the whole process down? I thought that was a really interesting question, because one thing is definitely true. Aviation is going to be the way that this vaccine is going to initially be distributed. It's not going to go on a cargo ship. It's going to go into aircraft and be sent to different places. I just thought it was an interesting topic. I don't know that I have an answer on it, but it's kind of very, very topical for us all at the moment. So I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking about, okay, if they make hundreds of thousands of batches, in fact, millions of batches, let's be clear, how do you distribute it, and how does private aviation get involved? And perhaps, as is the case in disaster relief, one of our organizations that we run is called Relief Air Wing, where we help out in disaster operations. How do we help that process? I think it's an interesting one, you know, and does it come down to information on whether airports are open or closed, or how you get in, or whether crews can operate? I don't know. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that. I just thought it was a really interesting question.
Well, I do work for a major pharmaceutical manufacturer.
Oh, that's right. I wasn't setting you up there, Steve. I wasn't setting you up at all. But go for it.
I'm not speaking for my employer at all, but do you have the capability of a -80 C transport facility The major, UPS, DHL, several of those folks have built this infrastructure out already in anticipation, and some of it with funds from the U.S. government in Mach warp, hyper speed, whatever the heck they call it. And so there were funds available actually to bid, just like there were funds available for pharmaceutical manufacturers to, usually you discover a vaccine, you put it in stage 1, 2, and 3 trials, it gets approved, and then you start manufacturing it. Well, this has all been going concurrently, which is some of the warp part of the whole operation. So the manufacturers these 3 manufacturers who now have vaccines that look like they're pretty close, they've been making this stuff already. And so that will be ready to ship from day of emergency approval. But as you probably have read as well, the latest one, it can be stored in a fridge, easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
I did read that. Yeah, that's awesome.
The middle one is a normal freezer, so like minus 20. The first one, the Pfizer vaccine, is a minus 80. Now, if you're like me, the first question is, man, that's cold when they inject it, isn't it? But no, of course, there is a certain shelf life at room temperature as well. So but for transport, you need this infrastructure. And so that's going to be the problem, because there's very few static containers without an active system that can keep something, or there's nothing really that can keep it minus 80. You got to have active refrigerant, even dry ice. Dry ice works for the minus 20, minus 30 range, but it's tough to get this.
Yeah, minus 80 is a big number. And that's minus 80.
Minus 80 C, minus 94, I think is what I read. I don't do my conversion. I know what minus 40 is, because they're the same in F and C. So other than that, and 0 is 32, so I got the big ones down. So
amazing.
Yeah. So look, private aviation on a one-off, if this were a emergency type situation as far as a natural disaster or something, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But in getting the bulk of these, and you say less political, but look, the whole distribution system and what countries, how they prioritize who gets it first, who even wants to take it first. I've read a lot of chat rooms here in the States with some of the most vocal critics of "you ain't making me take that thing" are U.S. airline pilots. And
at the same time, I read yesterday that Qantas is planning to make it a requirement for all passengers on Qantas Airlines to take the vaccine. There will be a lot of discussion about it. But ultimately, I think, hopefully the deal is that whoever takes it, but enough people take it that it just stops this kind of current spread, right?
The epidemiologists say you need a 70% acceptance rate. So you need 70% of a population to receive the vaccine for there to be the start of what they call herd immunity. So you need that amount. And right now in the U.S., the latest poll is 58% say they would take it, which is up in the last 2 months from 50%. So we're making progress.
But boy, do we love polls in the United States.
Oh yeah, they're all so accurate. But that's another reason I wanted to come on the call, that I'm happy. I hope that you'll accept us back into the League of Nations here.
Got a bit of work to do.
We got some work to do.
Got a bit of work to do first, United States.
I'm trying to do my part to.
Not that easy, Steve. Not that easy. It's like when you've been naughty in school and you want to come back into class. You got to do a little bit of a thing, but we'll forgive you at some point. I see a lot of smiling, nodding faces. So I think, hey, this is the Europe call. I will not be saying this on the United States call. I'll be like, yeah, cool, go America. We'll see. Any other questions before we wrap it up? Anything else that we want to get to? I don't think so. I think it's been a pretty cool. I'm not saying anything else there. So if you're really a glutton for punishment, jump onto call 2, which takes place at 1500 Z time or UTC time or London time, all the same thing, or Dublin time or Waterford time. And 4 p.m. Berlin, that's for you, Hans. Hans, if I don't show up, you're going to lead the call, okay? You're going to run this thing.
Absolutely, it's super easy, and just look at this beautiful picture from the Tier Garden.
Gorgeous.
Hello.
Look at that Tier Garden. Look, it's the same deal. We're just, all you need is a background and to be slightly.
And just rock on, exactly.
Yeah, rock on. So 20 bucks, you're doing it. So join Hans at 3 UTC, which is in about 3 hours from now. Oh no, it's not. It's less, is it? I can't do maths. In a while, anyway. You'll get an email. Thank you everybody for joining the call. It's been fun. We'll do another one. Maybe December, maybe January. Thank you to everybody, Jeff, Julie, Steve, everyone that's kind of jumped in with thoughts on things. And we have a bunch more people coming on, so we will be doing different topics on the afternoon call. But you know, I've enjoyed the balance between the chat. I hope you got some good operational updates out of it. In the meantime, it's been lovely to see you all, and until the next time, thank you. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you again. Bye.